Asterisk, the crowd roared under the twin suns of Ralvok Prime. Thousands of aliens filled the arena, shouting and laughing as the chains were dragged across the stone floor. At the center of it all stood a tall cage made of glowing metal. Inside, an alien princess with silver skin and glowing purple eyes stared at the crowd. Her name was Princess Delari, once ruler of the House of Emberlight. Now she was a prize chained, mocked, and offered to the highest bidder, the auctioneer. A fat alien with horns and golden rings in his nose raised his hand. A royal prize, everyone, once feared by worlds, now broken and tamed. The audience jeered. She's cursed. Someone yelled. She burned her own palace. Shouted. Another, Telari, didn't react. She stood still, cold and proud, even as her wrists were chained tight and her royal gown was torn. But her eyes, they still burned. No one wants her? The auctioneer laughed. Of course not. She's dangerous. But I offer her for free, yes. Free to anyone brave enough to take her. A final reward. Just say the word. Silence. Not one hand rose, not from the lizard generals. Not from the insect traders. Not from the rich alien nobles in their velvet chairs. No one moved. Then, from the back of the arena, a quiet voice spoke. I'll take her. Heads turned. Whispers spread like fire. A human? Someone gasped. Telari lifted her head slowly. A tall man with short brown hair and a scar across his cheek stepped forward. His name was Eli Vorn, a human soldier from Earth. His armor was scratched and old, but his eyes were calm. He walked like someone who had seen many battles and survived. The auctioneer blinked. You want the princess? Eli nodded once. Yes. The alien laughed. She's not a pet human. She's a fire mage. She'd burn you alive. Eli didn't smile. I'll take my chances. Telari narrowed her eyes. You choose me? She said, her voice sharp. You have no idea what I am. I know. Enough, Eli answered. Gasps echoed in the arena. A human choosing a cursed alien princess. The guards looked at each other in confusion. Should we unchain her? The auctioneer shrugged. Let him try. He'll be dead in a day anyway. The chains were unlocked. The crowd leaned forward, waiting for the princess to attack, but she didn't single quotes the dot. She stepped out of the cage slowly. Her bare feet touched the dusty ground. She walked until she stood face to face with Eli. She stared at him, silent, unreadable. You're taking me as your wife? She asked, almost mocking him. Eli met her gaze. Yes, she blinked. Really? Yes. Her laugh was soft and cold. You're either brave or stupid. Eli shrugged. Maybe both. She tilted her head. Do you think I'll obey you? Serve you like a pet? No, he said. I think you're someone who was treated like a monster when all you needed was a chance. For a moment, the princess said nothing. Then quietly she whispered, You're mad. Probably, Eli said. The guards handed him a thin metal token proof of the deal. The princess was now his dot. As they walked away from the arena, the crowd murmured in shock. Some laughed. Others whispered about curses and death. Telari didn't speak again. She walked beside the human in silence. Far from the arena, when they reached the desert edge, she finally turned to him. You could have taken a servant, a rich wife, a safe life. Why me? Eli looked at the horizon. Because no one else did. She stared at him, her mouth parting slightly. That night, they camped beneath the stars. Eli gave her food and water. Without speaking, she sat by the fire, watching him. She could feel it. This man wasn't like the others. He didn't fear her. He didn't want to own her, and that confused her dot as she lay down beside the fire, wrapped in the cloak he gave her. One thought repeated in her mind. You're taking me as your wife? Really? But for the first time in years, her heart felt something other than anger. It felt curiosity and a tiny spark of something else. Hope the first thing she noticed was the silence. No chains, no guards, no shouting voices calling her a monster. Just wind. And the quiet sound of a human soldier building a fire. Princess Talari sat on a fallen tree, watching Eli from the shadows. Her wrists were sore from the cuffs, but she didn't complain. The fire crackled gently between them, throwing orange light on his face. He didn't look at her. He just worked simple, calm, like she wasn't a former royal, like she wasn't dangerous. That annoyed her more than she expected. So, she said finally, her voice sharp, "This is your grand plan? Take the cursed princess into the wild and—" "What? Train me to be your pet?" Eli didn't answer. She scoffed. "You do realize I could kill you in your sleep, right? One word and you'd go up in flames. Still nothing. Just the sound of him slicing dried meat and placing it near the fire to cook. Do all humans ignore threats, or are you just broken in the head?" At that, Eli finally looked at her. His eyes were calm, too calm. "You're not going to kill me." "Oh," she smiled coldly. "And why not?" "Because," he said, "if you really wanted me dead, you'd have tried already." Talari stared at him. He was right. That made her even more angry. She stood and stepped closer, letting the firelight show her glowing eyes. "Do you know what I did before they caged me, human?" Eli didn't flinch. "I heard the rumors." She leaned in, whispering near his ear. "They weren't rumors," he nodded. "I know." She pulled back, blinking. "You still took me," he shrugged. "You needed someone who didn't care about the past." Talari sat down again, slower this time. Her heart felt strange, heavy. She wasn't used to this. Kindness. It made her nervous. That night, when Eli fell asleep, she didn't single quotes two dot instead. She waited, watching him from across the fire. Her fingers moved slowly, drawing a small circle in the air. A soft red glow pulsed in her palm. A tiny fire curse. It would burn him just a little. Just enough to test him. She whispered the word. The curse shot across the fire and struck his shoulder. He didn't scream. He rolled over, groaned once, and opened his eyes. "You okay?" he asked her calmly. Talari froze. You're not scared?" she whispered. "I've felt worse," Eli muttered. "Bandits, beasts, war. Your magic?" "It's warm." Then he laid back down like nothing happened. The glow in her palm faded. She sat there, stunned. What kind of man was this? Even the strongest warriors she'd met had feared her power. But this human treated it like candlelight. She stared at him for a long time before lying down again. She didn't sleep, but she didn't curse him again either. The next morning, she woke to the smell of food. Ila had made some kind of stew with local roots and dry meat. It wasn't royal cuisine, but it smelled comforting. He handed her a wooden bowl. Talari hesitated. "You're not going to poison me?" He looked confused. "Why would I?" She laughed bitterly. "That's how things are done in the palace. I'm not a palace man." She accepted the bowl and took a slow bite. It was warm, simple, real. "I don't get it," she said after a moment. "You had a choice. You could have picked gold, land, or a servant girl. But you chose me." Eli stared at the horizon. "They didn't see your worth. That was their mistake." She looked at him with wide eyes. "You're not joking, are you?" "No." She placed the bowl down and stood up. "You're insane." "Maybe." "You want me as your wife?" "Yes." Talari started to laugh sharp and wild. "You have no idea what you're getting into, human." Eli stood too. "Maybe not, but I know you're not a monster. And I know you deserve better than a cage." Her laughter slowly faded. No one had ever said that to her before. Not her advisors, not her guards, not even her own blood. She looked at him closely. This wasn't some trick. This wasn't a game, and that terrified her more than fire ever could. Asterisk. The cabin was too quiet for a royal. Princess Talari stood at the doorway. staring at the small wooden house like it was a trap. No guards, no glowing lights, no golden chairs. Just four walls, a roof made of leaves, and a soft smell of smoke. "This is your kingdom?" she asked. Eli stepped inside and dropped his bag. "It's not much, but it's safe." Safe. She hated that word. In her life, safe meant walls of fire, soldiers with sharp smiles, and poisoned food served with gold spoons. Talari stepped inside slowly. Her bare feet touched the wooden floor. It creaked under her weight. No alarms, no chains. Just silence. There were two mats, a tiny table, and shelves made from tree bark. One side held dried meat, cloth, tools. The other, empty. He had cleared a space. For her, she didn't know how to feel about that. As night fell, a storm rolled over the trees. Cold wind howled outside, shaking the windows. Talari wrapped the cloak tighter around her shoulders, sitting near the small fire inside. Eli sat across from her, fixing a broken lamp. "Why don't you ask me to serve you?" she said suddenly. He didn't look up. "Because I didn't take you as a servant. Then why wife? Why not friend? Or stranger?" Eli paused. "Because a wife isn't owned. A wife stands beside you," Talari laughed. "You think you're making me equal by calling me that." "I think you were always equal," he said. She stared at him. No one had ever said that. Not even in secret. Later that night, the fire burned low. Talari laid down on the mat he gave her, but sleep wouldn't come. Her mind raced. She wasn't afraid of monsters or storms. She was afraid of this. Kindness. Every moment with Eli was confusing. No anger, no control. No hunger in his eyes. What did he want? Why hadn't he touched her? Why did he keep treating her like a person, not a possession? She rolled over and looked at him. He sat near the window, sharpening a small knife. Guarding the house. Guarding her. Her voice was quiet. "You should sleep." He shook his head. "You're not used to being protected, are you?" "No," she whispered. "I was born to protect others. And they betrayed me." He nodded. Not asking for more. She turned away. But her heart was louder than the storm outside. Suddenly, a crash. Something slammed into the wall outside. Talari jumped up. Elam moved instantly, pulling out a spear and moving to the door. Talari's hands glowed red, ready to burn. But when he opened the door, a giant wild beast stood outside. Furred, horned, eyes like ice. It growled. Eli didn't wait. He stepped forward and shouted, waving his arms. "Go!" He yelled. "Get out of here!" The beast charged. Talari raised her hands, magic ready. But Eli threw himself at the beast first, stabbing it in the shoulder. It howled and ran into the trees. He shut the door behind him, breathing hard. Blood dripped from his arm. Talari stood frozen. "Why would you do that? You could have died." He wiped the blood with a cloth. "You're not ready to fight yet." "I am." She stepped closer, furious. "Don't be stupid for me, human." He looked into her eyes. "I'd rather bleed protecting you than watch you chained again." Silence, long silence. Then her voice softened. "I burned my own palace to stop them from using me. I thought no one would ever protect me again." Eli sat down. "You don't have to be alone anymore." Later that night, Talari sat beside him, watching him sleep for the first time. He looked tired, strong, real, not a prince. Not a knight, just a man who saw her as a woman. Not a weapon. She reached out slowly, touching the edge of his cloak. "Why me?" she whispered. He didn't wake, but something in her heart answered. "Because he saw me. Not the fire. Not the curse." Talari stood by the river at dawn. Mist floated above the water, soft like smoke. Her feet were cold, but she didn't move. She just stared at her reflection. The woman in the water didn't look like a princess anymore. No crown. No silk. No guards standing behind her. Only silence. only the sound of Eli chopping wood behind the cabin. She touched the side of her face gently. "Is this what freedom feels like?" she whispered. "Or is it just another kind of prison?" She didn't know anymore. Inside the cabin, Eli was quietly making tea. He saw her standing outside in the fog and didn't disturb her. He knew some pain couldn't be rushed. When she finally came back inside, her face looked older. Not by age, but by memory. He handed her a cup of tea. She took it without a word, then sat down. "I wasn't always like this," she said softly. Eli looked at her but said nothing. She stared into the cup. "Do you want to know why they chained me?" He nodded once. "Only if you want to tell me." A long pause, then she began. "My mother died when I was a child. My father married again, a noble woman with sweet words and poison in her eyes." She smiled bitterly. She didn't want me to rule. She wanted her son to be king. So she started spreading stories. That I was cursed, unstable, dangerous. She paid servants to whisper lies. She sent assassins to my room twice. I stopped them, but then they blamed me for violence. Talari's fingers tightened around the cup. She made the people fear me. My own soldiers began to doubt, and my father. He stood by and watched it happen. Ellie listened in silence. "One night," she continued, her voice colder now, "I was told the court planned to take me quietly, put me in chains, lock me away. They said it was for peace, but I wouldn't let them cage me. So I burned the palace wing." She looked at Eli. "Not the people, just the throne room, just the lies. They called me a monster anyway." Eli finally spoke. "You protected yourself." She nodded slowly. "But no one saw that. They only saw the flames, the fire in me, scared them." He leaned forward. "It doesn't scare me." Her eyes searched his. "Why not?" "Because I've walked through war," he said. "And I know what real monsters look like. You're not one of them." Her lips trembled, but she looked away. "I waited for death after they caught me," she whispered. "But they gave me a worse punishment, public shame, chained like a pet, sold like trash." Her hands shook slightly now. No one looked me in the eyes. Not even the guards. She turned back to Eli, voice quieter now. "You were the first." Eli reached out and placed his hand gently over hers. "You were never trash," he said. "You were a spark waiting for the right wind." She stared at his hand, then slowly placed her other hand over his. "No magic. No fire. Just warmth. Real. Human." That night, she sat beside him near the fire again, but this time, she wasn't watching for danger. She was watching him. And for the first time since her world fell apart, she smiled, a real smile. The bird stopped singing. That was the first sign. Eli paused in the middle of chopping wood, the axe still in his hands. He glanced around the trees. No wind. No sound. The forest had gone still, like it was holding its breath. Inside the cabin, Princess Talari was brushing her long silver hair, humming softly. It was the first time she had allowed herself to feel almost normal. Then she felt it, a pulse in the air. Her fingers froze. Her eyes narrowed. "They found me." 3 miles away, in the thick woods, a group of royal scouts moved like shadows. Their armor was black. Their blades were poison-tipped. They didn't speak. They didn't smile. They had one order: bring the princess back, or burn her with the traitor. The leader, a tall hunter with red markings on his face, whispered, "The scent is fresh. She's close, and someone else is with her." His second-in-command snorted. "A human should be easy." They began to close in. Back at the cabin, Eli stood at the doorway, holding his rifle and watching the forest. Talari stepped out beside him. "They're coming," he nodded. "I know." She looked at him. "You should run." He shook his head. "I didn't come this far to run now." She raised her hand, and a soft red glow formed in her palm. "If they try to take me, I won't hold back." He looked at her, calm as ever. "Good, because I'm not letting them take you." They shared one last look before splitting up, she into the trees, and he to the high rocks above. The trap was set. The hunters arrived, quiet, swift. One crept toward the cabin door, but stepped on a pressure wire Eli had placed. Click. Boom. A flash grenade exploded in his face, knocking him into the dirt. Before he could scream, a bolt from Eli's rifle hit his armor and sent him flying into the trees. Chaos erupted. Ambush! One hunter roared. Talari moved like lightning from behind a tree, her fire lighting the woods. She didn't burn to kill, only to scatter. Her magic danced like red lightning, pushing the attackers back, but there were too many. 5, 10, 12. One tackled Eli from behind, slamming him to the ground. He fought hard, kicking the weapon from the attacker's hands. Another hunter grabbed Talari by the wrist and shoved her to her knees. "You thought you could escape the throne forever?" She growled, her hands heating like molten metal. "Let me go." A fiery blast threw him into a tree, but it drained her energy fast. She fell to her knees, breathing hard. Another hunter raised his sword above her. "No!" Eli roared, charging in. He tackled the attacker, but took a blade to the side, deep, bleeding. Talari screamed. Not with fear. With rage, her eyes burned white. The trees around her bent from the heat. The air shimmered. "Get away from him!" She roared. She raised her hands and sent out a wave of pure fire, not deadly, but strong enough to blow back everyone. In a 20-foot circle, Eli dropped to the ground beside her. She caught him, her hands shaking. "You fool!" she whispered, trying to stop the bleeding. "You said you wouldn't die." "I'm not dead," he groaned. "Just stabbed." "You're bleeding too much," she whispered, tears in her voice. "I can't." He reached up weakly and touched her cheek. "You're not a monster." Then his eyes closed. Eli opened his eyes to firelight and pain. The ceiling above him was wooden, the walls stone and bark. Not the cabin. He wasn't in the forest anymore. His chest ached. His side burned. He tried to sit up, but a soft hand pushed him down. "Don't move," said a gentle voice. He turned his head and saw her. T_A. She sat beside him, her hand glowing faintly, pressing against his wound. Her eyes were tired, but calm. Her silver hair was messy. Her cloak was dirty and torn, but she was alive, and so was he. "You didn't leave me," he whispered. "I told you I wouldn't," she said. They were hidden in a stone cave far from the cabin, in the old ruins of a forgotten outpost. It belonged to an ancient alien warrior, an ally of Eli's from long ago. The warrior's name was Gorik, and he owed Eli life debt. "You really brought the princess here?" Gorik had asked in shock. "The crown will hunt you until the stars burn out." Eli had smiled weakly. "Then we'd better start running fast." But Talari said no. She didn't want to run anymore. "I'm done hiding," she said, standing by the fire with her arms crossed. "I will not live like prey while they call me a traitor." Eli, still weak, looked at her. "Then what do we do?" Her eyes met his. "We go to them," he blinked. "To the palace?" She nodded. "To the court. I will face them." Eli chuckled. "Even through pain. You're crazier than I am. I learned from the best." Days later, with Gorik's help, they stood before the Great Hall of Judgment, a massive black stone structure where rulers and nobles judged crimes and punishments. No slaves had ever walked free from there. No traitor had ever left alive. But Talari walked in with her head high, and Eli walked beside her. The crowd gasped. Some shouted, some reached for weapons. "She dares return. Seize the human, he's corrupted her." But the king, her father, stood and raised his hand. "Let them speak." His voice was heavy, cold, distant. Talari looked up at the man who once called her daughter. "I was betrayed," she said calmly. "You knew it. You let it happen." The nobles began to whisper. Eli stepped forward. "She is not your prisoner anymore. She's under human protection." The crowd roared in outrage. "You have no right," shouted one noble. "She burned our palace," yelled another. "She's my wife," Eli said, his voice steady. Gasps filled the hall. The king narrowed his eyes. "You dare claim royal blood as yours?" "I didn't take her," Eli said. "She chose me." Talari took his hand. "She chose freedom," he added. "And you have no right to take it back." Silence. Then the king gave a small, cruel smile. "Then let this be decided the old way. A trial by blade. If you want her, fight for her." Gorik, watching from the shadows, growled, "This is madness." But Eli nodded. "I'll fight." Talari gripped his arm. "You're still healing." He looked at her calm. "Then I better finish this quick." The champion stepped forward, a massive alien warrior in spiked armor, wielding twin axes, 10 feet tall. "No mercy." Eli limped into the circle, holding only a single blade. The fight began. Steel rang out. The crowd watched in silence. Eli dodged, moved, blocked, bled. But every time he fell, he got back up. Talari watched, her hands shaking. She wanted to burn the arena, to tear down the stone. But this fight, he had to win as a man. Not with her power, but with his heart. And finally Eli dropped low, rolled beneath the champion's axe, and drove his blade into the alien's side. The warrior fell. Eli stood, breathing hard, soaked in sweat and blood. "I didn't fight for a crown," he said aloud. "I fought for her." He turned to Talari. "For the woman who saved me first." Cliffhanger, end of part 6. The king said nothing, but slowly. He stepped down from his seat. He looked at his daughter, then at the human beside her. And for the first time in years, he bowed his head. The law was clear. She was free. The crowd still hadn't moved, even after Eli dropped the champion. Even after the king lowered his head. Even after the fire princess chose a human over her throne. It was like time had stopped. Talari stood tall, her silver eyes glowing, but not with fire, with peace. No chains, no fear. She reached out, helped Eli to his feet, and held his hand. High in front of them all. "I was called a curse," she said, her voice strong. "A weapon, a traitor." She looked around the stone hall. "But I was only ever guilty of choosing my own path." And then she said the words no one expected. "I don't want your throne." Gasps echoed. Nobles clutched their robes. The king's eyes widened. "I never wanted to rule by fear," she continued. "I only wanted to be seen, to be free." She turned to Eli and smiled softly. "And I found that not in gold or castles, but in the heart of a man with nothing." Eli chuckled under his breath. "Well, I had a cabin." She laughed quietly and squeezed his hand. Later, they walked out of the hall side by side. The sun broke through the clouds above the palace, touching her skin with warmth she hadn't felt in years. Outside, a few people bowed. Not in fear, not in forced loyalty, but in respect. Gorik met them at the gates. "So, what now, royalty?" "I'm not royalty anymore," Talari said. "But you're still a queen in fire," he replied. Eli raised a brow. "How about just Tally?" she smirked. "I'll allow it." They didn't return to the palace. They didn't stay in the kingdom. Instead, they walked into the wild. No throne, no crown, just the two of them and a new life ahead. They rebuilt the cabin together, stone by stone, wall by wall. He taught her how to cook with herbs. She taught him how to speak to the trees with flame. The forest no longer feared her, and for the first time in her life, she laughed freely. They danced in the rain. They kissed under starlight. And they woke every morning not as strangers, but as partners. Months passed. One morning, Eli found her sitting by the river, just like the day after he saved her. Only this time, she smiled first. She took his hand. and placed it on her belly. "Soon," she whispered. "It won't just be the two of us." His eyes widened. She nodded. Double yes, husband. You gave me a home, a life, a name again. And now, a family.